Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. Tonight, Felix Tshisekedi is first leader to take over power in the Democratic Republic of Congo through the ballot box, but his election is highly being contested by the opposition, France, and the National Episcopal Conference in DR Congo. Also in this newscast, we talk about rising insecurity in Gaoundéré, Adamawa region of Cameroun. Plus, in the second part of this newscast, a journalist in the northwest region of Cameroun will be telling us how difficult it is to practice in that part of Cameroun as a result of the crisis. What is the way forward? We shall be right back. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you once again for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. We begin right with the highly contested presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Felix Tshisekedi, the leader of DRC's main opposition party, the Union for Democracy and Progress, that has been declared the surprise winner of the 30th of December presidential election in DRC. The preliminary result announced earlier today is indicating that he is leading through, and it is so far the first leader that has taken over power through the ballot box. Martin Fayulu and Emmanuel Ramisini have so far invoked fraud as far as the election is concerned. Details with Equinoxe and Aze.
Proclamé provisoirement élu président de la République démocratique du Congo, Monsieur Tshisekedi Tshilombo.
The results announced early Thursday means the first electoral transfer of power in 59 years of independence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Felix Tshisekedi paid his respects to Joseph Kabila, whom he described as an important partner in democratic transition in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Speaking to thousands of cheering supporters in the capital Kinshasa, Felix Tshisekedi said he will be president for all Congolese. Polls put opposition coalition candidate Martin Fayulu on 47%, at least 20 points ahead of Tshisekedi. Martin Fayulu immediately rejected results, describing it as true electoral coup. Tshisekedi wins with 38.57% of more than 18 million ballot cast, according to the head of the Election Commission.
Ayant obtenu 7 51 013 suffrages valablement exprimés, soit 38,57%.
Tshisekedi received more than 7 million votes, compared with about 6.4 million from Martin Fayulu, who had won against manipulation. Emmanuel Ramazani, the handpicked candidate of longtime President Joseph Kabila, was third with 4.4 million votes. Riot police were deployed outside the offices of the DRC's Election Commission and elsewhere in the capital Kinshasa. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres reacted by saying he has taken note of the results announced and urged all parties to refrain from violence and to channel any electoral disputes through the established institutional mechanisms. Home election observers have said they witnessed serious irregularities on election day and during vote tallying, although a regional observer mission said the election went relatively well. 55 years old Felix Tshisekedi is first leader to take power via the ballot box in the Democratic Republic of Congo since Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, shortly after the Democratic Republic of Congo won its independence from Belgium in 1960. Kabila is due to leave office this month after 18 years in power and 2 years after official end of his mandate. Felix Tshisekedi has, however, thanked Martin Fayulu and Emmanuel Ramazani and said he is ready to work with them to build a better Congo.
And so far, we have been having reactions from the international community. We have the African Union that is calling for restraint on all the actors involved in the presidential election, which took place on the 30th of December 2018. The Democratic Republic of Congo, we have France as well, that has said that it is expressing concerns as far as the election is concerned, indicating that the opposition candidate Martin Fayulu is decrying electoral fraud. We call it have bishops in the Democratic Republic of Congo that have not accepted the results, indicating that they deployed a good number of election observers across the national territory. We are keenly following up developments in DRC. We shall be telling you more on that in a subsequent newscast. Now, authorities in Gaoundéré have denounced allegations identifying or accusing them of being accomplices of kidnappers in the Adamawa region of Cameroun. This comes after some locals blamed the government for not providing them with enough security, which has led to a series of abductions and the payment of ransom. Details with Simanjika and Gabriel.
After several complaints and accusing fingers pointing at authorities in Adamawa region of being accomplices to kidnappers and sharing in the ransom which they receive, Adamawa Regional Governor Kildadi Takweke Bukar debunks such accusations that have come from localities like Belel, Ngangha and Matap, who say they have been abandoned by authorities. Adamawa Regional Governor, speaking at a press briefing, say two aspects have caused the degeneration of the situation.
Des causes endogènes, des causes exogènes.
They are endogenous and exogenous causes which we all know, and also the situation in our neighboring nations that have impacted on us. It was at first highway robbery, which has now moved to the level of kidnapping and demanding for ransom.
Que ce phénomène a muté est devenu aujourd'hui le phénomène d'enlèvement des personnes.
Kildadi Bukar, however, reassured the population and told them that the defense forces are there to protect them and no one has been abandoned. Before the end of his press briefing, Adamawa Regional Governor announced the temporary suspension of a brigade commander from his post of responsibility. This is because he has been linked to the several kidnapping cases that has been recorded in his zone of operation, which is Belel. However, full sanction awaits this commander after investigations are over.
And military vehicles have been on patrol in Boya, southwest region of the country, amid tension reported in the town and in neighboring Munya. Activities were paralyzed in Boya today and other towns and villages in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroun after pro-independence fighters called for a ghost town as Sisiku Ayuktabe and Co appeared in court today in Yaoundé. Very few vehicles arrived to Boya early today and under strict military controls in Kumba. As we can see on our screens, the market was dead quiet. Not even a single trader, no buyer could be spotted. It was a similar scenario in Bamenda, chief town of the northwest region of Cameroun, where even motorbikes could not circulate. That was in the early hours of this morning, this afternoon, and even this evening. It has been practically difficult for local inhabitants of the two Anglophone regions of Cameroun to go about their activities normally. Gunshots in some parts of the two English-speaking regions of the country. On to something else, a restart of the case pitting Sisiku Ayuktabe and Co. or the 9 other Ambazonian leaders and the state of Cameroun after it was today suspended for recomposition of the court. This is after Colonel Abega Epus Eko, who was in charge of the case, is said to have handed over the file to a new magistrate, Colonel Mem Michael. The new magistrate had to identify the accused persons for the second time and proceeded to read the charges against them. The charges are, of course, some of the charges: non-possession of ID card, terrorism, propagation of false information, amongst a list of other charges levied against the Ambazonian leaders that appeared in court today. We are, of course, will be coming back to that story in a subsequent newscast to tell you about the exact date that the case was adjourned. We take you now to the Southwest Regional Headquarters of Boya to talk about research that have it that Africans are still wallowing in poverty because of what experts have so far described as a stable mindset of some African leaders that are perceiving change as threat to their positions. Reason why a seminar was organized to stress on the need to accept change and mindset to growth as a vital tool to development. Derek JATO has the details in the following report.
Africa is described as a commercial heaven to Western businessmen and women. Experts say the natural endowment has made the continent a destination even in this post-colonial era. But what explains the fact that most Africans are sleeping on their wealth but yet very poor? Educationists are worried and they want answers.
The big problem we have in the continent is the problem of mindset. Research has shown that our educational system produces people with a fixed mindset. And with people with a fixed mindset, they can't grow, they can't change. They are not open to dialogue, they are not open to discussion. They spend time cheating because they want to prove that they are top.
At a seminar in Buea, organized by Reverend Father George Kezejingwa, in his capacities as the first ever African to occupy the office of the Vice President of the International Federation of Catholic Universities, IFCO, and IFCO Africa President, titled his seminar, The Mindset.
Without a change of mindset, Africa is going nowhere because research has shown that our belief system, our mindset, what we think influences our character, the way we respond to problems, the way we respond to pressure, the way we respond to activities, the way we respond to challenges. When you have a fixed mindset, you don't change. You don't see change, you see change as a threat.
Taking place at the Catholic University Institute of Buea, during which participants at the end of these first 2 days of exchange praised the initiative.
And this one is different from the other seminars, and this is given by the president himself. I think so far with the interactions we have come to effectively realize what were our weaknesses.
The take-home message was that changing the fixed mindset into a growth mindset is the first tool needed for any development.
So we have to start training kids to know that it's about effort, it's about practice, it's about learning, it's about mentorship, it's about hard work, it's about endurance, it's about perseverance.
We continue to talk about e-governance in Cameroun that is facing tough times, especially in the government sector. Experts have indicated that the snail pace of the implementation of e-governance in the country has caused more harm than good. Immaculate Fogwe tells us more in the following report. The report of Immaculate Fogwe that we are going to be having on e-governance in Cameroun, which is facing tough times, especially in the domain of in the government sector. Experts that have indicated that the snail pace of the implementation of the e-governance in Cameroun has caused more harm than good, especially in the public sector. Let's have the details in this report. We certainly will be coming back to that report in our subsequent newscast. But before we go, after the withdrawal of Central African Republic from the Douala seaport, Chad has announced that it would not leave the port of Douala, at least for now. The declaration was made by Chadian Director of Customs that was in the city of Douala today. We of course will be coming back to that in our subsequent newscast. There, bringing us to the end of this first segment of the news. Up next is Talking Point. We shall be right back. We announced to you earlier that we are going to be joined tonight by a journalist from the northwest region of Cameroun. He has been practicing for several years now in that part of the country, but it's been practically difficult for him, especially since the Anglophone crisis escalated. Mr. JATO, Richard, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Point.
Thank
we welcome you for the first time.
Thank you, Mimi. Good evening to you and to all the televiewers of Equinoxe Television.
Good evening
nice
to you.
Being with you.
We are also welcoming you on our platform. Yeah. The first major preoccupation that we want to find out from you is you have traveled all the way from Bamenda Northwest region of Cameroon. It was not an easy scenario in that part of the country for inhabitants. For you as a journalist, tell us how the situation has been since this crisis escalated.
Well, Mimi, it's painful sometimes to narrate this story anywhere you go, because the difficulty for a journalist is even much more the humanitarian aspect of the crisis. You know, I even happen to sometimes in July travel to Nigeria going through the Mamfe, the Kimbeng, Ekop road right to Nigeria, and I understood the impact of this crisis, especially on the villagers, you know, the poor people, the common man on the road. It was quite difficult. Why am I saying this? Because as a journalist, one of the principal, the most fundamental information a journalist needs to take to the population is having to do with health, it's having to do with shelter, it's having to do with, you know, education of children. And so that is the priority for me as a journalist, because others may want political information, others may want foreign news information, that are sports journalists, but I was practicing more in the domain of health and human rights. And when we talk health, human rights, you see education is involved.
Certainly.
And consequently, traveling around the region in the first place, it's practically impossible in the Northwest as of date, let alone within Mezam, where I resident. You can't even move from Bamenda to Bambwe if you know the geography. You can't move from Bambwe to Fundong to, you know, you can't move from Bamenda to Bambili to Bali because of the difficulty of the conflict to get information or probably disseminate information as a journalist. You know, you need to investigate, you need to be informed to inform.
You need to go to your information source to get the right information.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's been quite difficult with most of us, but I must note that as a journalist, when you are a journalist, you also are a social being. By implication, you interact with people, you need to have a very friendly attitude to everybody, irrespective of the shade of opinion, his religious background, or what belief, who the person is, because a journalist is supposed to be a neutral personality whose job is to collect, to treat, and disseminate information.
Is it easy to be neutral now in the Anglophone region of Cameroon as a practicing journalist?
You can't.
Is it easy to be neutral?
You can't be very neutral in this context, because you are first of all a human being with a feeling before becoming a journalist. You are a human being, and you can, for example, see a baby whose mother has died, whose father has died, and brothers crying as an orphan, and then you pretend to do an objective report without being touched. You can meet a military man who has been shot on the road and he's dead. You may have a feeling for the military man partially, but what about the wife? What about the children?
The family?
If it's a military man who is an Anglophone, for example, because the crisis is an Anglophone region, you would have a feeling for the military man, but you would have more feeling for the wife, who is also an Anglophone, who has a right to live, who has a right not to be discriminated upon. So you would have more feeling for those people. You need to tell their story and find a way of informing people about the suffering, you know, of each and everyone. Then those who are in the bushes, there are a lot of persons in the bushes suffering. Just imagine, Mimi, that a child of 4 years who is running behind the mother because the mother ran away from conflict and is in a bush somewhere, and a scorpion stings such a child, or a snake bite, and the child can have access to health facility. How would you report with an objective mind as a journalist without feeling for such a child? So it's a bit complex for the media to practice, especially in this context. That days we have ghost town, you need just to be home. You can't go out, because when you are out, the military will not know. I mean, in case where the military wants people in for security disposition, or in case where the separatist fighters have decided that people stay in.
Like what's the case today?
When you go out, how would you put on your face that I'm a journalist moving? You wouldn't tie a piece on your face that I'm a journalist, so I have a right to move out. You are just caught in the web.
That's what makes the practice of journalism difficult.
And in all of that, you need to be informed, because you need to know what was happening at the level of Finance Junction, what was happening in Damukong Street. You need to have all this information and have true information, because a good journalist should tell the truth first. That's the basis of journalism, and then you verify and cross your facts to tell the story.
Verifying these facts and telling the story.
Yes.
Verifying is one thing, and to be able to tell the story without being threatened
it's a different ball game.
It's another ball game. You've been attending series of seminars, schooling or training journalists on how to manage such situations, how to cope, especially in crisis situation, how to report in crisis situation. Tell us how you are managing this situation in the Anglophone region, especially when you do a coverage on sensitive topics. Of course, you say you are interested in health issues, but now several health cases are related to the Anglophone crisis. Tell us how you get to manage this.
Well, as I told you, as a journalist, you need to be friendly, and to be friendly implies you need to be very accessible and credible to people. But credibility in the context of this crisis would certainly not even have a place, because at times you want to go get information, just the conflict, the shooting in an area where you can't penetrate, because there must first of all be peace if you need to function. That is the basis of every activity on earth. Even our well-being, our raison d'etre of being in life is first of all
another major preoccupation, Mr. JATO Richard, is the fact that it's a fact, of course, that this crisis is underreported. We have cases of gross human rights violation. We have cases of shootings, rape, killings in the two Anglophone regions, which are not told, because most of these localities have either been deserted. The locals have gone to other parts of Cameroon, others are neighboring Nigeria, others are even in bushes, like you said earlier. Tell us about the impact of this crisis not being reported the way it was supposed to be, just because journalists are not able to go to the interland to get the facts the way they are.
Well, you know, journalism is not just about information, it's also about sensitization. The aspect you are talking about, I would like to look at it from the perspective of sensitization, because when roads are blocked or people are in the bushes because of conflict, movement is not possible, it becomes difficult to even take information sometimes that could even be good for the ears of the parties, you know, concerned. Information that could be good for the ears of the parties. Tell me, Mimi, if you are in a place like in Kumbu and you can't move to Kumbu, everybody who is in Kumbu needs savon to bathe, everybody who is in Kumbu needs food to eat, everybody who is in Kumbu needs health facility. There is the cardiac center in Shishong. I remember a case of a lady who was brought from Yaoundé and she stopped at Mobienquen with heart problems. That lady had to travel to Shishong, to the cardiac center, and she almost collapsed in Quen when they told her the roads are blocked and nobody knows when the roads are going to be open. So these are some of the difficulty. Children are born with heart disease. It's not of their making. They don't know about the crisis. They don't know where the conflict started from. They don't know who is fighting. It's not their business. They are naturally born to this innocent world with a heart disease, and you need to go for medical treatment in a hospital like that, and you can't move. What is the crime of such a child? And in that case, we as journalists need to get to the areas where we need to get information, to get people know what is happening and how it's going to be possible for, you know, medication to be taken to these people. But you can't do all of that.
Is this
it makes
possible?
Work difficult.
Do you think it is absolutely possible for this crisis to be reported? Absolutely every happenings in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon to be reported the way it's supposed to be, without necessarily taking sides. I mean, given the facts the way they are. Do you think it's possible?
It is difficult, because you can have access to part of them. It's a two-party conflict. So you may have access to one of the parties and you wouldn't have access to the other party. How do you report? Because reporting, you also need to be very balanced. You need to be balanced. You could have information from the left and you need to verify from the left to get a story that is credible, so that you tell the story and it is accepted by both persons. Everybody sees himself in the action you are reporting. But if you do not get both sides of the story, the truth is that you may finally not tell the story, because you wouldn't want a situation where information that is not verified is not put on the table for those who need to get the information.
Yes.
So there is that difficulty. I really don't know whether you want to hear what I'm telling you.
No, of course, you
yes,
know,
okay.
have been visiting some of these localities. I understand the intricacies and some of the difficulties that journalists actually do face in gathering information, fact-checking and cross-checking. Mr. Richard JATO, I want to find out from you, you said earlier that was out of this platform that there was a way out of this crisis. It's possible for the government to resolve this problem and put an end to the conflict, the gunshots, and for peace to return in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon. What is your proposal?
Well, my proposal, Mimi, is that first of all, the parties conflicting had an original problem. If you realize in this crisis, everything have moved away from the original troubles that were put on the table because of the consequences. In life, you cannot get a problem and instead of resolving the problem, you start solving the consequences. So we must get to the drawing board, and to get to the drawing board, first, peace must be given a chance, because that is the basis, as I said. If people have to talk, if any communication and interaction and union and the kind of talking needs to go about this, there should first of all be peace, that there are no gunshots, no fighting. Everybody, both separatists and the government forces, put their arms down and we do an introspection. What am I talking about? That the government can sit and ask that, all right, for the past 3 years, we have taken this measure. We have taken this measure, about 2, 3, 4 measures. Is it working? When you diagnose a patient of an illness, for example, malaria, and you give treatment as prescribed by the medical doctor, and the treatment is not working,
you have to change strategy. An indication that the government has been using the same solution to the crisis and has to change strategy. Is that what you're saying?
That is not what I'm saying. I think I have what I'm saying, that when you diagnose and you do not get the person meet health as is expected, you know that that diagnosis needs to be given a different orientation. That's on the part of the government. And on the part of the separatists, there is also this whole idea of the fact that they are pushing an agenda. They are pushing an agenda which puts forth this, crisis. So there is a time sometimes to also have a stop.
So you have the upper hand to put an end to the crisis. Is it the government or the pro-independence fighters?
Normally, the government has the. But as I tell you, both parties need to do an introspection. Both have to look into what have we been doing, what are the results, because the whole thing is going to benefit both parties if the crisis come to an end. The impact is on the community,
especially the population, and if the
impact is on the community. The government wants the communities to live peacefully and progress economically. The separatists are also fighting for the well-being of the population. So both of them, if they want the well-being of the population, there's a need for both of them to also listen. Both of them to listen to the population, because it is a kind of crisis where at this level it's like both parties, nobody's even listening to. There are the minds that are in between that nobody's giving them room to talk. They should be ready to listen.
Thank you so much, Mr. JATO, Richard, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
On Talking Points, we hope to have you some other time again. Thank you so much.
I rather hope to have you on Hot Cocoa when you come to Birmingham.
Certainly, I will. To our viewers, it was equally a pleasure having us in this edition of the 6 p.m. Primetime Newscast on Equinoxe Television. Until we meet again, goodbye.